Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
2 certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only 2 best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go. Hi.
Hey.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. The day you're hearing this, it's a little late, but
It's the day after your birthday. No, there's someone in Hawaii who's listening to this right now, who's cleaning up after they ate dinner, and it's still your birthday.
Well, those people can absolutely wish me a happy birthday.
So, I'm just assuming we have one person in Hawaii who might be listening to this on December 17th.
Yeah.
So,
well, I haven't actually had my birthday as of recording this, but I assume once you're listening, I've had a wonderful day, probably eating a lot of food.
series of days.
Yeah.
Because we have a whole day of food plans the day before, as one does when it's Rachel
Well, I
and a
think
birthday.
when it's your birthday, you have a whole week of good food. Like that's how I want to celebrate.
I should get more into birthdays if that's what they're about.
That's what they've been about the whole time. You've been missing out.
No, I always eat well on my birthday. There's no doubt about that. So, okay. Today, December 18th, is the last day of what has been a 2-week special promotion, Clarity in a Time of COVID. We brought back the discounts on the Passion Profile short course. You can get half off through the end of today. It's just half off on our site. It's $125 instead of $250. That's a ridiculous bargain. You can also, separate and apart from that, if you want, do a single coaching session for $150, which, by the way, is way lower than what we even charge our former clients. And by the way, we only ever let former clients do single sessions. So that's going away today. Get yourself a single session if you want to work through something.
Especially right at the start of a new year, because we'll probably end up scheduling.
Well, we're definitely going to schedule. I'm not talking to you next week.
If you sign up today for a single session, we're going to talk to you in January, which honestly, what better time? Especially after this year. So we hope some of you will sign up for that, because we don't know when we're going to bring these back again. If or when
we'll see.
we bring these back. Or you can bundle the short course and a single session together and then get an additional $50 off.
Yeah.
So the whole thing with bundle would be $225, which is insane. So that's just through today. If you find us after today, sorry, the short course is still available. It's just going to be, it's back to its normal cost.
Mm-hmm. And single sessions will be gone. No more.
Yeah.
So links to that are in the episode notes. You can always find the short course on our site. The single session is a special thing. So you have to either check your inbox for the latest email from us. There will be a link at the bottom if you are on our email list, or the episode notes of this episode for the checkout page to the single session.
There's no even link to find it on our website.
It's literally just a checkout page, because I'm assuming that if you know you want a single session, you don't need to be convinced. You're just ready to go buy it.
Yep.
And then once we see that you've signed up, we will email you and within a couple of days, and we'll schedule it with you for January.
Okay. So that's your last reminder.
Clarity in a time of COVID. Still, God, we're at the end of this year. And that's really what this episode is.
A little bit of a year in review.
I don't know what it's going to be. It's a side chat. I don't really plan these. We sit down, we record what comes out, what comes out, and you accept it.
And you like it.
And you will like it. Or you just turn it off. I don't care.
Sure.
I'll never know.
Sure. But I hope you like it. But this is especially an interesting one because this is our last episode of 2020. We're not going to be back until 2021. Actually, New Year's Day, first day. Kick it off with some Clarity on Fire. But
good riddance.
We're taking a 2-week break between now and then. So we just got to get all of our last thoughts and feelings out about this year.
Okay. So I wanted to start with a check-in about how no expectations for the rest of 2021. At the time we're recording this, it's December 9th or something. So we still got a few more weeks of the year left. And you've, at this point, got a couple more weeks left in the year. But when we had that episode back in September, which is still timely. If you haven't listened to that, go back to September and listen to the No Expectations Challenge. You can have no expectations any old time. It doesn't have to just be now. But we challenged everyone and ourselves, most especially ourselves, to go into the last 3 months of the year, challenging yourself to have no expectations about what could happen. I came up with the idea to talk about that because typically when I get to about September, I start making assumptions about what I already kind of wrap up my year mentally. I'm like, this is what the year was. This is what the rest of it's going to be.
And
I write it off.
I wanted at the beginning of the year, or has it not met my expectations?
I
or have
basically
I not
write
gotten
off
where I thought I was going to be. Yeah.
I write off the last 25% of the year.
Which is kind of crazy, right?
But that's what I do. I basically am just like, it's a wash. And I didn't want to do that this time. I actively wanted to assume that anything could happen. And that could be bad. That could be good. That could be anything in between. It's not my job to have expectations or to force my idea of what should happen onto the rest of the year. I just wanted to try to have no attachment to whatever did happen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm happy that we got a new president. I can't deny that I'm happy about that. That was an expectation. I didn't have any. I really didn't. I was like, this could go either way.
Yeah.
I'm happy about that.
If you had expectations about that and somehow knew, I don't know how you did, because everyone that I knew was just like,
not sure.
Just truly just trying to give that one up. So yeah.
We lost Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Didn't expect that.
Oh, that was brutal.
That wasn't great.
Yeah.
You lose some, you win some.
I've ever since she has passed, RIP, I've seen multiple dog costumes and
people
gifts.
Really
I mean, I feel like there's going to be a lot of RBG gifts
back
going on
into the
Christmas.
RBG. And I think that's only
I'm
right.
into it.
Yeah.
That was rough.
But personally, it's not, so let's just be, I'm not, can you hear I don't know how I feel about it. That's where I'm at. I don't know how I feel about it.
Mixed bag.
Yeah. That's
I really feel mixed bag, which probably should have expected that.
No expectations. So
valid.
I thought you were doing that on purpose. You weren't.
No. Yeah. Mixed bag. This experiment has been a mixed bag, I would say.
I mean, secretly what I was hoping was that if I had no expectations, that all the good, amazing things would happen. But then that in and of itself is kind of an expectation.
A secret expectation.
Of course
under
I did.
The challenge of no expectations.
Of course I did. And then none of that really happened. In fact, this is where I'm at. And Kristen is feeling it too. I'm just less depressed about it today than she is, which is actually an interesting turn of events. We can talk about that. Usually I'm the depressive one. I feel like I work that corner very well.
Well, I'll give you a day off.
Thanks. But I feel like nothing is working right now. And yet I feel like everything's working exactly as it's supposed to. That's where I'm at. I'm at this really weird place where I'm annoyed that it feels like so many things are either stalled out or not seemingly working. And yet I also have like a greater sense of trust and knowledge that it's all going to be fine and that it's working exactly as it should. And I think that's actually a normal reaction. As contradictory as it sounds, I think one is the human reaction. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of more ego and understandably human attachment to things like money and survival. And wait, like I shouldn't be in this place that we get to when we're human and understandably attached to getting our needs met or whatever it is that we're upset about. Hey, remember how I wanted to do neurofeedback? Remember from the Body Keeps the Score episode?
Yep.
I reached out to multiple people, practitioners in the area. No one got back to me. And at some point I was like, I don't feel like I can force this because I feel like when something is right, it just flows naturally. So for some reason, I'm being stymied there. And I got very frustrated by that because I really wanted to try it and then no one was letting me. And I just
That's
didn't
just
want to
one of the things that feels like it hasn't been working. And I feel the first part of what you said. And I am wanting to feel the second part. It feels very much like a lot of things are not working. Things that used to work that don't work anymore, or things that I was sure would work, just absolutely not working. And I don't I want to have no expectations about the fact that things aren't working. And I want to believe, okay, if they're not working, clearly other things are meant to happen. And that's what I would tell all my clients, right? And that's what I like. I'm trying to walk my talk and like live what I preach here. But it's hard. It's hard when you're in the thick of a lot of stuff not working. And it feels kind of like everywhere I look, things aren't working, not just for me, but for a lot of people. And I know that's partially because we are going through something as a globe right now, as like a whole world. We're going through something really hard and things are not going to work the same right now.
No.
And I want to trust that ultimately it's going to be for my and all of our highest good that things aren't working now. But when you can't see when or how that's going to shake out, you feel like you're kind of holding your breath for a while.
I need to make a confession.
Sure.
I think this is a proper time for confessions. The last episode of the year.
Yeah.
What's there left to lose? I mean, really, it doesn't mean, it's just an episode in time. Why is it special? Because it's the last one in this particular month. But it feels like I'm just going to make some confessions right now.
Confess away.
One of my confessions is that I feel like I should be busier because when you're busier, you make more money. And when you own your own business, making money is kind of necessary because no one else is giving you that money except you. You're earning it. You're working it. But I am less anxious now than I've been all year. And it's because I'm finally, for the first time, not that busy. And I love it. And I shouldn't love it, but I love it. And you know what? I don't think I should say I shouldn't love it, because if you're happy, genuinely like gratified by something, that's the best magnet for future success anyway. If I was sitting around bemoaning that or worrying about it, I would just become a magnet to more things to bemoan or worry about.
It's true.
I don't actually think that would be productive. So I am actually enjoying it. And I think let me try to step into something kind of esoteric here for a second. I think that, this is like a spiritual principle, is that even when you're not consciously asking for something, your experience in your life creates contrast. And you know what you want because you know what you don't want. And you end up sort of asking the universe for what you want when you're having an experience that's very clearly what you don't want. You might not even be consciously asking for it to change, but you are because you hate it. And so it's like asking the universe, I hate this, please give me something else. So earlier this year when we were so busy and there was like a million things that I was juggling all at once and I had no idea how I was going to do it all and survive. And I was so anxious. I was asking for a respite.
Yes.
And I was craving the relief of not having nothing to do because I was doing everything. And now I'm getting that and it feels awesome.
I agree.
But there's a huge but coming because you can hear it in her voice.
I agree. But there's another piece of this coming in right now that I think is like, I don't know, it's like tainting it somehow.
For you?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
Yeah. And I'm sure you're going to resonate with this, but I was talking to a coach friend yesterday and she was talking about trying to figure out like what was blocking her from what she wanted. And she had gotten this like report, like this paid for a report by this group of really great coaches. It came back and it's like, here's the things that are blocking you based on what you said you're going through in this moment. And the one that stood out the most to me was the line, you can have what you want, but not the way you want it.
Not always the way you want it.
That's the block. That's the amount. That's not a real thing. That's just what it feels like. Is like,
you can't have to make concessions.
Yeah, you can't have what you want the way you want it.
Right. You gotta like settle for a little less, settle for it to be slightly different.
Right. So I'm like, I got what I want. It's kind of like the genie when you ask the genie for what you want. And you're like, uh-oh.
It's that monkey's paw story. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. We've all watched Aladdin. We know how the genie works. It always gives you something a little different than what you really asked for.
Right.
So that's the experience that I feel like I'm having now, where all year I was so busy, sometimes absurdly busy to the point of like, I would give anything for some downtime. And now I have downtime and I'm like, oh no.
I'm not supposed to have downtime.
I'm not supposed to have downtime. This feels wrong. This is a problem. And now I'm worried about the and I feel like I can't have it and peace. And that's that's what I need to work through in order to actually enjoy this, because I'm going to get busy again. I know this. I know how the cycles of change and the cycles of life go. And if you get what you want and you can't appreciate it because it's not the exact form, that means you had a whole bunch of expectations on it.
And if
so clearly I didn't do a great job of not actually having expectations.
Well, and here's the thing, like, if you're getting what you clearly asked for, then who are you to say it's not exactly right?
Mm-hmm.
You're like, no, it's not. No, that's not what I meant. And I'm like, no, I actually think it is what you meant. The universe is actually giving you exactly what you need and you can't recognize it as such. That's what I think the problem is. My next confession is going to trigger you.
Oh.
And maybe a lot of people, but I'm going to say it. That's what I love doing. I kind of like when things aren't working sometimes.
Okay, you have to explain that one to me.
Okay, sometimes I kind of like when nothing is working because I get excited because I'm like, oh, something's up. I start getting suspicious in like a good way of like, okay, something is afoot in Sherlock terms. Like the game is on. The game is afoot. Yeah, I feel like when there's a conspiracy of nothing working, I feel like you're being redirected. I feel like something is being set up. Something is happening. That's how I feel. I'm like, ooh, something's happening because nothing is happening. So something's gearing up to happen. And oh, that's interesting. That's how I feel when something stops working, especially when it stops working on like a massive, almost comical level, like nothing is working. Then I'm like, oh, well, this is a huge redirect, or this is a big setup. And I like a big setup for something new and different. You know,
this makes sense because you are drawn.
I love the drama.
You love the drama of the big setup and the big reveal.
Oh, the epic twists. I
like them too when I'm watching a really good like Netflix or
not
HBO
when it's your
show.
Life.
I love it less when I'm living it. Here's what I can give you.
Okay.
On this. What I will, give up here is when nothing historically, and again, this time it happened again, when nothing is working, I get big ideas.
Yeah. Well, it's space. That's why I'm so happy right now.
It's partially space, but sometimes it's not the space. Sometimes it's just like, I have to think about it in a new way. Because things aren't working. Things aren't working. You have to get creative. Versus normally, I'm probably going to keep going with what's working. And if it keeps working indefinitely, well, this is human nature. We don't really like to rock the boat that much unless the boat really needs rocking. So sometimes the universe comes in and tells you, you can't keep doing this. You have to make a change. And that's when big ideas happen. So when I felt like nothing was working, a year and a half or so ago, I had a big idea of like a new path to go down, and it changed a lot. I have had another really big idea,
which you're now working on.
Which I'm now working on.
Space that you now have.
It's true. I have the space
before, and she's like, "Babe, it's not working. I don't like it." I can totally see the setup and what's going on here.
Right, and I can too. But just not today. That's okay. Some days I can see the setup. Some days I just need to be in the experience of it and like feeling it all so I can actually get through it. And that's fine. But I will say, if that's what you mean by like, it's not working. And so there's a big setup. And then I can usually see the moment where I'm like, oh, that's what I had to go through this for.
Didn't we just record an episode 2 months ago about is it not working or is it not working
Totally,
yet?
yes.
And then you just forgot all of that before we sat down to record this one. Like, what are you doing?
I know. We do these podcasts as much for ourselves as for you.
I mean, for real. Okay. Those are my two
I don't think I'm ready to share my big idea quite yet. It's still
too new.
Like my recent blog post where I told you guys don't share your ideas too soon. I am going to walk my talk on that. But I will be sharing that.
Yeah, we'll share it
in the coming months.
When it's sometime in 2021, we'll have a new thing to share.
Yes,
very different.
It's brewing, but when it's
different thing for us.
Yes, it is.
But very cool and potentially very relevant to many of you listening.
I think so. I think some of you are going to be like, I've been waiting for this.
Don't get too excited.
I think some people are going to be really excited.
Well,
anyway, we're just putting teasers out there.
Expectations.
No expectations?
No expectations. Okay, here's another question. Okay. Well, I was going to ask you a question, but first I want to give a little preface. I think that it's very normal this time of year to reflect back on everything that's happened. And often some of the questions we ask are, okay, well, what could I have done better? Or what could I have done differently? And I would like to strike from the record, anyone's, yours, anyone who's listening, I don't want you to look back on this year and try to find anything to criticize or anything you could have done differently, okay? We're not doing that this year. We're not doing criticism or constructive feedback this year, okay? We're just not. I think we need to give ourselves a break, okay? We got through this year and now it's over. And that was an achievement in and of itself. And so the only thing you're allowed to do is give yourself kudos, okay? That's it. We're not critically reflecting. We're just not doing it.
Thank goodness. Yes.
Okay, good. You like that?
I'm all for that.
Okay. So on that note, the one question I'd like to ask everyone, you can ask anything that occurs to you, is what are you genuinely and somewhat specifically proud of yourself for this year? Like you could say generic, more vague stuff like, oh, I'm proud that I am alive at the end of this year. Hey, if that's all you got, that's fine. Or I'm proud that I was a good mom this year. That's lovely. But I would like a specific example, like something that actually paints the picture of why you're proud of yourself this year. I'll go first because I already have my idea. I am proud of two things. One, that I somehow, without ending up quite in a heap on the floor, almost at times. I mean, like, push myself to the limit of anxiety, but somehow managed multiple things at once. I bought a condo. I then had to deal with all the logistics of that and then like moving while this is all going on at the same time, while running a business during a pandemic, while getting a promotion at my side gig and having to learn the ropes all at a new job. This was all going on in like the same couple months. And it was the busiest and the most insane and the most overwhelmed I have felt maybe ever in years. And that I somehow got through that is something I'm very specifically proud of. And the thing I am literally most proud of is that I'm not depressed right now. That's because I've had many years where I got to this point in the year and I was depressed vaguely because it was the holidays and like I would reflect back. This is the time of year
too that if you're gonna sink down into that,
you often do.
Yeah,
I'm not depressed in this year.
That's amazing.
During the holiday season, I am not depressed, nor have I actually really been depressed at all this year. I've been really anxious at times, understandably, because it was a very intense, chaotic year. But I have not actually been depressed, nor am I at all depressed right now. And I don't know how that, I really am like, I don't know how I did that. But like, I must be doing something right or well because I'm not depressed.
Yeah.
So like, kudos to friggin' me is what I'm saying.
Huge kudos. Okay. What am I specifically proud of myself for? I mean, everywhere I look, I see small businesses just really suffering.
Yeah.
This year.
Closing and
I mean, scrambling to stay afloat, and some of them not. And I've seen a lot of places shut down. I've seen a lot of places hugely suffering, like cannot feed their families. Yeah. I am very proud of us as business owners for weathering something nobody predicted.
No.
And has it been the easiest year?
No, definitely not.
No, but on the whole, like,
we did a pretty good job of pivoting and like staying, I don't know, just riding the wave.
And Rachel and I are not usually like the best at rapid change.
I kind of do I'm not good at it, but that's the way I change is nothing. Let's change everything. I don't love it. I'm not good at it.
Yeah, but it happens. It's not always pretty.
It's the way it happens.
It's not pretty. There are some people who are very good at like innovation and change and rapid evolution.
I don't like it. I'm a curmudgeon. I don't want to change if I don't have to.
People. So even still, we have kept ourselves in business. And we're doing okay. Here. I am also specifically proud of myself for a level of speaking up for myself that I did earlier this year to somebody very, very high up in a company that I was working for. in a way that I never would have imagined, that I would have been so honest and so open and so direct and vulnerable. And that has been a lifelong challenge of mine, to speak up for myself so intensely and directly. And I was given the biggest challenge of that I think I've faced. And I'm very proud of myself for how I handled it.
That's a good, very specific example.
Yeah, that's been a long-term challenge of mine that I can say, it wasn't just that moment. It was all the moments that led up to that moment that proved to me I have done the work here. And it showed when I got tested. So that was good.
I've done the work here and it showed when I got tested.
Are you saying that because I need to remember that right now?
Yeah. Oh no, there's just something about that made me go back and say it again.
That's fair.
Are you
being tested?
Potentially showing the work that you've done now and you're just proving your mettle?
I'm also, that reminds me. I'm also proud of having, in the past year or two, having multiple big ideas and acting on many of them.
Yeah.
They weren't so
really
overwhelming.
Sitting on them either.
Yeah, just deciding, okay, this spoke to me, or I'm feeling very called in a certain direction and I don't get how I'm going to do it. It's super overwhelming. It's kind of scary, but whatever, I'm going to do it. And I'm doing that again right now. So I don't always think of myself as a big idea person or like a fast moving person, but
no,
when I need to, I can.
And your evidence that things work out is that you're still here and that they generally have up until now. So funny that we very much fixate on, nope, this must be the time. Wherever we are, this must be the time when things are actually the worst and actually not working out and actually going to hell. And it's never actually the case. When you have enough hindsight, you're like, no, you actually have not yet ended up in a situation, at least not you, I can't speak for everyone, where you didn't eventually recover from it.
And I want to point out for probably all of us that if someone had asked, what is like the worst case scenario of something happening? Which we do in coaching sometimes. We ask, what is the worst case scenario and how would you handle it? We all just got a real life experience of that. What is like a global pandemic that affects literally everyone?
It's a pretty bad situation.
It's a worst case scenario moment. And like, I just want everyone, including myself, to like look around right now and say, in this moment, I'm okay.
In a worst case scenario.
I'm in a worst case scenario. I have been in it probably for months, most of a year, and I'm still okay in this moment.
That's not the only worst case scenario I lived through this year.
Right? A lot of people actually probably are living through multiple. Like this was just one of them.
What's funny is that I've lived through multiple worst case scenarios this year and I'm not depressed. And I wonder if I hate to say this because my past self would hate it. I think it might be why I'm not depressed.
I felt that one coming.
I don't like it. I don't like it. Well, but there is something about, if that can't hurt me, then nothing can.
If you're worrying about a worst case scenario happening,
that's where you spend most of your energy.
That's where the depression, that's where the anxiety comes from, is the fear of it.
Yeah.
Once you're in it,
you're like,
here we are. Okay.
And then after it's over, you're like, well, I'm free.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I faced something that would have terrified a past version of me.
And I'm
okay.
Let's be clear. It did rip me apart and it, tore me up and it was hard and it hurt and it was overwhelming and it was scary and
many tears.
But then once you get beyond it, you get far enough away from it, then you're like, oh, wow, I'm just free now. That's really nice. I like being free. So yeah, that might have something to do with why I'm not depressed.
Yeah. We've all faced something that would have been like, literally, I mean, if I was coaching someone and I And I was like, what's the worst case scenario? And they're like, I don't know, like a global pandemic comes in and shuts down the entire economy and people are dying everywhere. Like that would be, and I would have laughed at them like, okay,
well, why don't we make
we
it
got a
more
little dire
realistic?
there. You know what I mean?
Well, you know what's funny is that a number of years ago, I remember very clearly thinking, I remember being in the kitchen cooking and like thinking, this is not the kind of business that's going to easily weather an apocalypse. Because people don't need coaching once the apocalypse happens. They're just too focused on survival at that point.
But you know what you would have said would have survived an apocalypse? Restaurants, food industry. Like things people need. They need to eat.
Well, sure. Well, but no, I would have said, obviously.
But this kind of apocalypse has been a very specific kind.
I mean, yeah, but you know what? I wasn't going that specific in my imaginings. I was just like, I better just kind of enjoy this while it lasts, because I was thinking more of it in a global warming climate change perspective. Mm-hmm. If everyone's underwater, they're not going to be that concerned about coaching. Mm-hmm. And I don't really have anything to offer during an apocalypse other than what, Tina Fey said in 30 Rock, which was, I'll just be a traveling bard because that was her only use in an apocalypse. I could do that.
People may not be able to pay me for it, but they're still going to need emotional support in an apocalypse.
Yeah,
maybe more so.
But I was imagining like a literal situation, kind of like this. I wasn't thinking pandemic, but I was thinking business would totally just dry up and we wouldn't make it because no one needs to talk about their career when they're worried about just surviving. Mm-hmm. And war, world wars have happened before. Things, have happened where people they have to like save and they have to literally ration their food. And it has happened before, it could happen again. And it did happen just in a slightly different way. And we weathered it. And we still are weathering it. And sometimes it's ugly and it's scary. And don't mistake, just because you've been listening to this podcast for a year and we sound not depressed, doesn't mean that we haven't been worried or that we're not still kind of worried about what 2021 could bring. I don't know. But again, I'm like, part of me is like, I hate that nothing is working out. And why is everything stalled? And then the greater part of me is, I'm not kind of excited about this setup right now because I'm truly not that attached to anything. That's what I think is really helpful, is as much as I enjoy doing this podcast and as much as I like having my own business, I'm actually not super attached to any of it. If someone tells me you can't do that anymore, you have to pivot, I might grieve it, but then I'll be like, okay, let's try something else then. Yep. I'm not attached to it having to be this particular way.
That's true. That's true. That's the thing I need to remember is like, I always figure it out and it might not look the same.
Well, and you don't even figure it out. You get the idea. It's not like you thought your way into it.
Right.
You get inspired, you get an idea, you get a pivot, you get the message.
It's actually, you're right. It's not me. Like I'm having and have been having ideas on pivots and what to do when things aren't working, but I'm not figuring it out. Like it's being delivered to me. I don't even have to do that work of figuring out the idea. I just have to be receptive enough in a few moments here and there to be able to get it and then act on it. And that's what that's all any of us need to do, is be receptive enough, even when things aren't working. Like today, probably not going to be my most receptive day. Fine. You don't have to be positive and like trusting and spiritually in tune every single day in the middle of a gigantic crisis.
No.
A few moments here and there where you can just zoom out, get a little bit of perspective, remind yourself of what's really true and the fact that you're okay. Those little moments is where the ideas sneak in and the answers sneak in. That's it. That's all you need. So I just think there's a lot of pressure out there in like the coachy kind of self-development world to be positive and handle everything with grace and
I'm not grateful.
Flow and trust. And no, like little sparks of moments of that is all you need and maybe all you can expect of yourself.
No expectations.
No expectations.
And maybe when things aren't working, it's actually working exactly right.
I know, I hate that.
And I'm not saying that. I know I sound like an asshole when I say that, but I am not saying that without my street cred to back it up, okay? Like, I have the experience and the having lived through the worst case scenario of my own imagining. I'm not saying I couldn't imagine worse. I'm just saying I had a very specific worst case scenario in mind that I now had to live through. And you know what? I'm fine.
Mhm.
And so I say this just this year specifically. If something feels like it's not working, it might actually just be the setup for the better thing that's supposed to work. Okay.
If you can just breathe through the turbulence, it will not last forever. I the other day when I was struggling, I went back to one of my old blog posts and reread it.
That's nice. You're trying to help yourself.
Trying to help myself, past me, helping current me.
Which one?
And it was 2 mantras for, I remember that I had written a blog post about 2 mantras for getting through the tough times.
Okay.
And I could only remember one of the mantras in the moment. So I went back and found the blog post to remind me of the 2 mantras. One of them is, this won't last forever.
Yeah.
And one of them is, you've been through harder things than this before. Because we've all been through hard shit. Yeah. And going through one more thing, it might feel different. It might feel specifically harder in some way, but you've been through equally hard, if not harder things before. You can handle this too. And it was actually helpful. So thank you, past Kristen, for helping present day Kristen.
Also, kind of one last thing I want to say is that I've seen a message. I think it's for me specifically, but I want to share it because I think it could be for you too. Anyone listening, is I've just seen this message popping up multiple places, and I've paid attention to the synchronicity of it. Like, I see the universe is trying to like tell me something. Enjoy the pause.
Yeah.
Enjoy the pause. So that's what I'm going to try to do with all this space that I sometimes I'm like, oh wait, should I be enjoying this? Because I feel like I shouldn't be enjoying this, but I actually kind of secretly love it. Just enjoy it. Enjoy the pause, whatever that means for you. Because in the pause is where things actually have a chance to like breathe and integrate. And like, you can't just like perpetually climb a mountain. Every once in a while, you got to stop and take a breather and like soothe your muscles and change your shoes and sleep and stuff, and then keep going. So this might just be a pause before you move on to the next thing. In fact, I know that's what it is. I don't think I've just paused and that's the rest of my life.
Well, think about the cyclical nature of the seasons. So like if you were a farmer, you would understand this really specifically well, where in the spring you plant things, in the summer things grow, and then you harvest in the fall. And then in the winter, you have to let the fields lie untouched so that the soil is not, so that it can replenish. And so everything can be ready to plant again in the spring.
Also, it's too hard to plant anything.
It's too hard. It's too cold. And otherwise, if you just try to plant all year round, you will strip the soil and you will have terribly undernourished plants.
Or you won't get anything.
So that is the nature of all creation all of the time. You have to have these periods of slowing down. I'm not saying everyone is in that period right now. I know people who feel like they're really busy right now.
We are seasonally in that.
But we are seasonally in the winter. And at least
in the dormant phase.
Sorry if you're in Australia or New Zealand.
Well, I mean,
but
I'm in the winter.
We're in the winter. And things will pick back up again. They always do. There will be a springtime again, whether the actual weather or your own personal version of springtime, where ideas will come back and energy will start to pick up again and you're going to ramp back up. It always happens.
Okay. Is that? I think we said a lot of random things that you could then paste together somewhat like a ransom note of advice, with like the weird magazine letters.
It's like partially a personal catch up on what's going on in our worlds, but also hopefully some nuggets of things that you guys need to hear right now too.
I can't hurt.
There was enough little nuggets in there. Something hopefully stuck.
I think it's good to process. Taking a pause and we're processing.
We're taking a pause on this podcast too. Exactly. We're taking a couple of weeks off.
2 whole weeks. Can you believe it? Without us.
Is that the longest pause we've ever taken on this podcast?
It's about equal to other pauses we've done.
Yeah. So hopefully this wasn't, I feel like I should have been more hopeful going into a new year.
No,
I am hopeful about 2021.
You're just
no
a
expectations, but a little hopeful.
You're just a little bit skeptical and curmudgeonly today.
Yeah, I think after this year, that's fair. We're all a little bit more of a curmudgeon at the end of this year than we were at the beginning of the year.
I'm not.
Which is funny because you're usually the curmudgeon.
I do like to just do things in a contrary fashion.
That makes sense. If you're a curmudgeon all the time, maybe you actually become less curmudgeonly.
I think there's something about everyone else being a curmudgeon that you're like, oh, everyone's like me. And then you're happy.
That's good. I was curmudgeonly before it was cool.
Yeah. Well, then you just get excited because everyone feels like you do. And then you're happier, ironically.
That's funny.
Okay. Well,
So again, we will see you on the first of the year.
New Year's Day, dear Rachel.
Starting it off right. And final reminder, if you
like the idea of being coached by either of us, slightly, not really depressive, but, you know, weird. Where we're at is weird. We're in a weird place. You want to be coached by us.
But coaching is still the same.
Coaching is still the
Whatever
same.
place I'm
so
in.
much easier to coach someone else than coach myself.
Oh, I mean, impossible to coach yourself. And, you know, it's like
also, I don't need to coach you if you do the course. So you can just hear me having said something when we recorded it. You don't have to hear from me live at all if you don't want to.
You don't want
if that feels like a little risky right now.
But yes, today's the last day. If you want to join us for either or both of our promotions, the half off short course or the single coaching session or both
bundle, then you can check out the show notes and take action from there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see. Happy all the things.
Happy all the holidays.
Hanukkah might be over by now. I'm not really up on when Hanukkah is. I'm sorry, I'm not Jewish. But you know, Merry Christmas to those of you for whom it's relevant.
I would say Happy New Year, but we get to talk to you on New Year's Day. So Happy New Year's Eve.
Sure. So some of you could listen to us on New Year's Eve by the time, you know, like again, that person in Hawaii
time zones are crazy.
Could be listening. But if you're listening to us at like 9 p.m. on New Year's Eve, I mean, that's really nice. But like, what else? Really don't you have anything better to do? So we will see you in 2021. By the time you hear from us next, this will all be over.
All right, let's do it.
Bye.
Bye.